I should have known from the very beginning that my mother-in-law would not let me have this day, my day, without making it about herself. But I wanted to believe just for a few hours that things would be different. Dear friends, before we continue, I just want to take a moment to thank all of you for your incredible support. My channel is so far along, reaching 1,000 subscribers, and your help means everything to me. Please hit subscribing below. Your support truly makes a huge difference. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much for being a part of my channel journey. Now back to the story. The reception had been perfect. The music played, the guests laughed, and I felt nothing but pure happiness as I held Daniel's hand. After all the stress of wedding planning, we had finally made it. We were married. We had survived the chaos, the family drama, the months of passive-aggressive comments from my mother-in-law. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her move. My mother-in-law walked toward the stage with purpose, her expression unreadable. At first, I thought she was going to give a speech. Maybe it was a surprise toast. She hadn't mentioned anything, but she had been acting strangely all night, sitting at her table, barely speaking to me, sulking like a child denied attention. Without hesitation, she took the microphone straight from the MC's hand. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Conversations stopped. Glasses hovered mid-air. It was as if everyone in the reception hall had frozen at the same time. She adjusted the microphone stand, cleared her throat, and spoke in a voice so steady and deliberate that it sent a chill down my spine. I have something very important to say. Her tone was cold, detached, as if she were making a financial announcement rather than speaking at her son's wedding. Daniel stiffened beside me. My fingers twitched, my grip tightening around my napkin as an uneasy feeling settled deep in my chest. She turned to Daniel as if I were not even in the room. I have made an executive decision. Daniel, you are not wasting money on a honeymoon. That money should be spent on me, not on her. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some guests coughed, others whispered. A few exchanged glances, their eyes flicking between me, Daniel, and the woman standing at the front of the hall, trying to determine whether she was serious. She was. I blinked, struggling to process what I had just heard. A soft laugh escaped me, not out of amusement but disbelief. This had to be some kind of cruel joke. She couldn't possibly mean what she was saying. Daniel did not laugh. His hands had moved from the table to his lap, clenched into fists. So tight his knuckles turned white. His entire body was rigid, his chest rising and falling in controlled, heavy breaths. I turned to him, searching for an explanation, but his face was unreadable, cold and blank. It was the look of someone trying to suppress an overwhelming rage. Then I knew. This wasn't just a tasteless remark. This wasn't an inappropriate joke. She had done something. A deep, sickening dread settled in my stomach. Some guests chuckled nervously, expecting someone to clarify that this was all a misunderstanding. Samantha, my maid of honor, leaned in close. Is she serious? I did not answer. I could not. My fingers, now icy, reached for my phone under the table. My hands trembled as I unlocked my banking app. I stared at the loading screen, silently begging for a glitch, a delay, anything but the reality I feared. The balance appeared and my entire body went numb. The honeymoon fund was gone. A hollow feeling spread through me, my breath coming in shallow, uneven gasps. Every dollar we had saved, every generous wedding gift from friends and family, it was all gone. My chest tightened. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the transaction history, my breath catching in my throat. One after another, deductions drained our account, each transaction cutting deeper. My pulse pounded as I saw where the money had gone, every last cent funneled straight into her personal account. I turned to Daniel, my voice barely above a whisper, my throat tight with panic. Tell me this isn't real. He inhaled sharply, his fingers moving frantically across his phone screen as he checked his account. His jaw tightened, a flicker of something dark flashing in his eyes. I watched as he scanned the numbers, his lips parting slightly before pressing into a thin, hard line. Slowly, he looked up, his face pale, his hands trembling as he gripped his phone like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. His voice came out hoarse, barely more than a whisper, but heavy with something I had never heard before, pure devastation. It's gone. She took everything. The world shifted beneath me, the air suddenly too thick to breathe. A cold wave surged through my chest, leaving me frozen in place, my heartbeat pounding like a war drum in my ears. Around us, the reception hall fell into an eerie silence. Eyes darted across the room, uncertain and wary, as guests exchanged hushed whispers. Some clutched their glasses a little tighter, while others simply stared, wide-eyed, caught between shock and second-hand embarrassment. No one knew whether to step in or pretend they hadn't just witnessed my mother-in-law shamelessly admit to taking what wasn't hers. Samantha sucked in a sharp breath beside me. "This is insane. Tell me she didn't just steal your money." I swallowed hard, my pulse hammering against my ribs. The betrayal coiled around me like a vice, squeezing tighter and tighter with every second that passed. And yet, my mother-in-law stood at the front of the room, completely unbothered. She was not ashamed. She was not embarrassed. She was proud. She had stolen from us. Brazenly. Publicly. And she thought we would just accept it. I wanted to scream. To hurl my champagne glass straight at her smug face. But I could not move. I could not think. All I could do was sit there, my entire world crumbling around me as I tried to comprehend how, on the most important day of my life, the very person who was supposed to welcome me into the family had instead torn apart. A cold wave washed over me, settling deep in my chest. I could feel the heat drain from my face as my fingers gripped the table, digging into the smooth wood, trying to anchor myself in place. Just moments ago, this reception had been full of laughter, people congratulating us, glasses clinking. But now it felt like everything had shifted. People were looking at me, looking at my husband, looking at my mother-in-law. It was like they were watching a train wreck happen in real time. My husband stood up slowly, and the scrape of his chair against the floor broke the heavy silence. He didn't say anything at first, but I could see it in the way his body was tense, his shoulders squared. His voice finally came, steady but laced with something cold. "Mom, where is our money?" The room held its breath. The awkward silence stretched out. My mother-in-law let out a dramatic sigh, swirled her wine in her glass like she was the one being put out, and casually replied, "Oh, Daniel, don't be so dramatic. I transferred it to my account, obviously. You'll thank me later." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. People around us started to whisper, a few gasping, but others just staring in disbelief. One person leaned forward and I could hear them whispering, "Did she really just admit that?" My heart was racing. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. She did this on purpose. She wanted us to know exactly what she'd done. I could barely speak. I finally managed to get the words out. You transferred it?" She just waved her hand like it was no big deal and gave me a smug smile. "Yes, dear. And honestly, you should be grateful. I put that money to good use." A fresh wave of shocked whispers spread like wildfire across the room. Samantha, my maid of honor, leaned in close, her voice full of disbelief. "Tell me she didn't just steal your honeymoon fund and act like it's a favor." My stomach twisted. How could she be so shameless? My mother-in-law wasn't done. "I finally paid off my credit card debt. Do you know how stressful that was?" She chuckled, clearly proud of herself. Somewhere in the crowd, I heard a sharp gasp. A couple near the dance floor exchanged horrified looks. I could almost hear them thinking, did she just say she used their honeymoon money for that? But it wasn't over. He kept going. "Oh, and I put down a deposit on that luxury SUV I've been wanting." A low whistle came from the back of the room. People were shaking their heads in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. But it got worse. And I booked myself a little vacation. A 5-star Caribbean cruise. Penthouse suite, of course. The room went completely still. I could feel the air get sucked out of the place. My heart was pounding in my chest. She was actually bragging about this. She was standing there in the middle of our wedding reception and gloating about how she took our honeymoon fund to pay for a luxury cruise. A woman near the gift table dropped her fork, and the loud clatter broke through the shocked silence. Samantha slammed her glass down, shaking her head in disbelief. "This is actually disgusting." Finally, my husband spoke. His voice was cold, sharp, cutting through the noise. "You stole from us." A few people murmured their agreement, some shaking their heads. But my mother-in-law? He just laughed. It was the kind of laugh you do when you know you're getting away with something. "Oh, please. That money was just sitting there, waiting to be wasted on some silly trip. You don't need a honeymoon. You need to start thinking about your responsibilities." I could feel the rage building inside me. How could she even say that? The audacity. People around us were beginning to murmur more openly. She actually thinks she's the victim? Someone said. I'd be calling the cops. I turned to my husband, barely able to breathe. I could see it then, the exact moment he hit his limit. His shoulders squared, his jaw locked. He didn't say anything, just reached into his pocket. Without a word, he pulled out his phone and began dialing. I could feel the tension building in the room. Wait, who's he calling? Someone whispered. Is he really calling the bank? For the first time all night, my mother-in-law's smug expression faltered. She gripped her wine glass so tightly her knuckles were white. Daniel, what are you doing? She demanded, her voice shaky, trying to maintain some semblance of control. He didn't answer her. He just stood there, his expression cold and unreadable. The phone rang once, twice. Then, click. Hello, this is First National Bank. How can I assist you today? The color drained from my mother-in-law's face. My husband didn't hesitate. His voice was calm, steady, deadly. Yes, I need to report fraudulent transactions on my account. The room went absolutely silent. People's eyes darted between my husband and his mother. She looked afraid, genuinely afraid for the first time that night. My husband didn't blink. You stole thousands from me and my wife. And now? He turned to me, his eyes locking with mine. We're going to deal with the consequences. The seconds stretched on, thick with tension. As the phone call ended, a suffocating silence fell over the room. Everyone was waiting, unsure of what would happen next, as my mother-in-law's smug confidence crumbled like a house of cards. My husband didn't give her the satisfaction of a response. Instead, his eyes were locked onto mine, a silent agreement between us both that this was no longer a situation to negotiate. The room held its breath as we all waited for the storm that was coming next. Dear friends, the second part of the story is about Prove Justice Lies. Click the link below to see part 2.